Narrator calm, inviting. Summer vacations. They're supposed to be the highlight of the year, right? Beaches where the sun never seems to set. Road trips with the windows down and music blasting. Cabins tucked away in the woods where you can finally unplug and breathe. We wait all year for these little escapes, because for a few weeks, life feels free. Beat. The sound of laughter cuts short, replaced by a faint wind. Narrator lower, uneasy. But what if I told you, not every summer escape ends with happy memories? What if the very places we go to relax, those beaches, cabins, highways, become the backdrop for something much darker? Sound. A faint echo of footsteps in sand. These aren't campfire tales. These are true stories. Real people, just like you and me, who set out for a summer adventure and came back with nightmares they'll never forget. Pause. Softer tone, building suspense. In tonight's video, we're diving into 3 chilling cases. The first, a simple beach trip where a stranger turned paradise into a place of paranoia. The second, a couple's cozy cabin retreat where the forest itself seemed to be watching. And the third, a family road trip across long, empty highways that led to something they were never meant to see. Sound. A car engine revving faintly in the background. Narrator leaning in, conspiratorial. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because each story only gets darker. Just when you think you know what's happening, there's another turn. Another detail that will leave you asking, what if it happened to me? Beat. Voice shifts warmer, engaging. Before we dive in, take a second to hit that subscribe button. I post true horror stories just like these every week, and your support helps this channel keep going. Plus, it makes sure you never miss the next chilling story. Go ahead. I'll wait. Pause. Distant waves return, but slower, heavier. All right. Ready? Then pack your bags carefully. Because when it comes to summer vacations, not everyone makes it back home. Narrator calm, inviting. There's something about the beach in summertime that feels safe. The sun, the laughter, the crowded boardwalks. Even late at night, with the moon reflecting off the waves, the ocean feels more calming than threatening. But sometimes, the danger doesn't come from the water. It comes from someone standing just beyond the tide, watching. Beat. The sound of footsteps in sand. This story happened to a group of college friends who just wanted one last carefree summer before graduation. There were 5 of them in total, 2 couples and 1 single friend. They rented a beach house along the coast. Nothing fancy, just a small place with peeling paint, sandy floors, and a view of the ocean that made you forget about everything else. Days were spent in swimsuits, nights around bonfires with music and cheap drinks. It was supposed to be perfect. The setup. On the first night, they walked down to the pier, eating ice cream and making jokes that only made sense when you're a little buzzed and a lot happy. That's when one of them noticed him, an older man, maybe in his late 50s. He was sitting alone at the edge of the pier, no fishing rod, no cooler, nothing, just staring out at the water. At first, no one thought much of it. After all, beaches attract all kinds of people. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he just liked the ocean. But over the next few days, they saw him again and again. During the day, he'd be parked in a lawn chair further down the beach, always alone. At night, he'd stand barefoot at the shoreline, half in the water, half out, as if waiting for something. Rising tension. At first, the group joked about it. They even gave him a nickname, Pier Guy. But jokes started turning uneasy when he always seemed to show up wherever they were. If they walked down the beach, he'd be there an hour later. If they sat around their bonfire, he'd be a distant silhouette standing at the edge of the surf. He never approached, never spoke, just watched. One of the girls swore he followed her when she went alone to grab something from the boardwalk convenience store. She said she felt him behind her, every step of the way, and when she turned around at the rental house door, he was across the street, just standing under a flickering street lamp. Her friends brushed it off at first. Maybe she was drunk, maybe she was paranoid. But then the little things started adding up. Footprints leading up to their porch at night. the sound of whistling when they thought they were alone on the sand. Once, the single guy in the group swore he saw the old man crouching by the dunes, half hidden, just staring at their house. Sound. Low hum, distant crashing waves. Imagine being there. You're on vacation, supposed to feel safe, surrounded by friends. And yet every time you look over your shoulder, someone is there. Not hurting you, not talking to you, just reminding you silently that they're watching. And before we continue, if you're the type of person who gets goosebumps just picturing this kind of thing, being watched when you're supposed to feel safe, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because these are the kinds of stories I share every week, and trust me, they only get darker from here. The climax. On the fourth night, the group stayed out late at a bar down the boardwalk. They stumbled home laughing, pushing each other, salty air sticking to their skin. But when they reached the beach house, something immediately felt wrong. The front door was cracked open. They knew they'd locked it. They always locked it. Inside, the living room smelled of salt and mildew. Sand streaked across the floor in wide, uneven footprints that didn't match any of theirs. One of them whispered, "Is someone here?" And the laughter that had carried them from the bar dissolved into silence. They moved cautiously, sticking together, checking room by room. The kitchen was empty. The bathroom was empty. But when they reached the narrow staircase leading upstairs, they froze. There was a sound, a whisper. Not words, not at first. Just the rasp of someone breathing too hard, too close. The single guy, trying to sound braver than he felt, crept up first. The others followed, their hearts pounding in their ears. And when they pushed open the door to the first bedroom, there he was, the man from the beach, sitting on the bed in the dark, hands folded neatly in his lap, whispering to himself. His skin was pale under the moonlight spilling through the blinds, his hair damp as if he'd just walked out of the ocean. They froze. Nobody moved. The man looked at them, tilted his head, and smiled. Then, in a hoarse voice, he muttered something none of them could make out, over and over again, like a prayer, or a warning. Sound. Sudden high-pitched sting of music. One of the girls screamed. The man stood up slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. That was enough to break them. They bolted out of the house, barefoot, running across the sand until they found someone still awake on the boardwalk who called the police. The aftermath. When the authorities finally went inside, they found the man still there, calm, sitting back on the bed like nothing had happened. He didn't fight, didn't resist. He just sat. He had no ID, no wallet, nothing to prove who he was. The only thing he carried was a photograph. Wrinkled, sun-bleached, broken in half. Half of a family portrait. When they asked him who he was, he barely spoke. Only repeated fragments of sentences that made no sense. The cops suspected he wasn't all there, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. The friends packed up the next morning and cut their trip short. None of them ever went back to that beach again. Reflection. Think about that for a moment. You go to the ocean for peace, for fun, for memories with your best friends. And instead, you end up face to face with a stranger who's been watching you the whole time. No reason. No explanation, just there. Even in the brightest summer paradise, danger doesn't always hide in shadows. Sometimes it sits in plain sight, under the sun, waiting for you to notice. Narrator, calm, reflective. Cabins in the woods. They're supposed to be the perfect escape. No neighbors, no traffic, no distractions. Just you, your loved one, and the stillness of nature. But stillness can be deceiving. Because sometimes the silence out there isn't empty. It's watching. The setup. This story follows a young couple, let's call them Ethan and Rachel, who decided to spend a week in a secluded mountain cabin one summer. They'd been dating for almost 2 years, and this trip was supposed to be their little adventure. A place to unplug, hike the trails, maybe fish in the nearby lake, and just enjoy being away from the noise of the city. The cabin itself was everything they'd hoped for. Rustic but cozy, perched on a ridge with tall pines surrounding it like silent guards. The first night was magical, fireflies drifting past their porch, stars scattered above them, and the sound of the wind through the trees that felt almost like the forest was breathing. By day, they hiked through mossy trails and laughed when they got lost for half an hour. By night, they roasted marshmallows over a small fire and shared ghost stories they didn't really believe in. It was peaceful. Perfect, at least at first. Rising tension. The first strange thing happened on their third night. They were sitting outside, finishing a bottle of wine, when they heard it, a sharp crack of a branch, somewhere just beyond the treeline. Ethan froze. Rachel laughed nervously and said it was probably just a deer. But then came another crack. And another, like footsteps pacing around them, just out of sight. Ethan called out, half joking, "Hello? Anyone out there?" Silence. The sound stopped, but the feeling it left behind didn't. The next day, while hiking, they stumbled across something carved into one of the trees. At first Ethan thought it was graffiti, kids messing around. But the deeper they looked, the stranger it got. Symbols, circles, and jagged runes carved into bark, old and new, stretching across several trees. Rachel touched one and pulled her hand back immediately, whispering, "They're fresh." That night, things escalated. As they lay in bed, they heard tapping. Soft, deliberate tapping against the cabin windows. Not random, not like branches in the wind. It moved from one side of the cabin to another. When Ethan finally worked up the nerve to check, he found nothing but faint footprints in the dirt. Barefoot, leading in circles around the cabin. Sound. Slow tapping against glass, then silence. Now imagine being them. Middle of nowhere, no cell service, no neighbors for miles. Every noise suddenly feels amplified. Every shadow feels closer than it should be. And hey, if you're listening to this and thinking, "Nope, that's why I'd never stay in some creepy cabin," then you're my kind of person. But if you love this kind of story, the kind that makes you glance at your own window right now, don't forget to hit subscribe, because I've got more just like it every week. The climax. On the fifth night, a storm rolled in. Heavy rain battered the cabin roof. Thunder cracked so close it shook the windows. Then, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Ethan lit a few candles, trying to laugh it off. Rachel sat close, whispering that she didn't feel right, that she felt like someone was out there. And then, she saw them. Through the flickering candlelight, she noticed movement outside. Shapes. Several figures standing just beyond the tree line, unmoving, watching. Ethan blew out the candle in panic, but that only made the darkness worse. Lightning flashed through the windows, and for a split second, the figures were illuminated. Dozens of them, lined up in the trees, faces hidden in shadow, their bodies dripping with rain, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. The couple didn't hesitate. They grabbed their keys, bolted to the car, and tore down the muddy dirt road as fast as they could. And in the glow of their headlights, shadows ran alongside the road, figures darting in and out of the trees, fast, keeping pace with the car. Rachel was screaming, Ethan flooring the gas, the car sliding in the rain. Every flash of lightning showed the figures closer, reaching out, their arms stretching toward the car as if to pull it back. They didn't stop driving until the forest gave way to pavement, and the cabin was miles behind them. The aftermath. The next morning, they went straight to the nearest ranger station. The ranger was skeptical at first, probably thought they were just city kids spooking themselves. But when he sent a team to investigate, they didn't laugh anymore. Inside the forest, they found animal bones arranged in strange patterns, symbols freshly carved into tree bark, and worse, on the cabin walls under the windows, new carvings, ones that hadn't been there when Ethan and Rachel arrived. The couple didn't even bother going back to collect the rest of their things. They drove home, silent, shaken, unable to explain what they had seen. And to this day, they refuse to go camping again. Not in a cabin, not in a tent, not anywhere outside the city limits. Reflection. Think about that the next time you see a listing for a cozy little cabin. Think about the way the trees might look at night, standing in rows like silent witnesses. Think about how far away help really is. The wilderness isn't empty, it's claimed, and sometimes it lets you in, just to remind you you're not the only one there. Narrator, soft, reflective. There's something hypnotic about the open road. The way the lines on the highway blur together, the endless fields, the neon motel signs glowing like false promises. Summer road trips feel timeless, like little snapshots of freedom. But freedom out there comes with a price. Because once you're miles from anywhere, once the gas stations disappear and the roads get darker, who's really out there with you? The setup. This story comes from a family of 4. A father, a mother, and their 2 kids, ages 9 and 12. One summer, they decided to take a cross-country road trip. No big plans, no plane tickets. Just a map, their SUV, and a cooler full of sodas and snacks. They avoided the big highways whenever they could, preferring the back roads. They stayed at small-town motels, stopped at quirky roadside diners, and visited random attractions only locals knew about. To the kids, it felt like an adventure. To the parents, it was nostalgia. The first week was everything they wanted. Endless blue skies, deserts that seemed to stretch forever. Nights spent in little towns with neon lights buzzing over empty streets. It was the kind of trip that felt like it would make memories they'd never forget. And it did. Just not the way they hoped. Rising tension. It started small. The first time they noticed the truck was outside a gas station in Arizona. Rusty red paint, old model pickup with dents along the side. The father noticed it because it had no plates. Just sat there at the edge of the lot. When they pulled back onto the highway, it was behind them. Not close, just far enough to be noticeable. A few hours later, after stopping for food in another town, there it was again. Parked across the street. First, they laughed it off. Probably just another traveler on the same route, the mom said. But the more they drove, the more wrong it felt. Because no matter how many turns they took, how many detours they made, the truck kept reappearing. Always a few cars back. Always lingering. At night, the headlights would appear in their rearview mirror. Too close. Sometimes revving, then falling back. Sometimes disappearing completely, only to show up again 20 minutes later, like it had been waiting. Sound. Low engine rumble, headlights swelling, then fading. The kids started to notice. They whispered in the back seat, asking why the truck was always there. The parents reassured them, but their voices didn't sound convincing anymore. One night, on a long stretch of road through the desert, the truck's headlights appeared again. Only this time, they didn't stay behind. They swerved closer, brighter, the engine roaring as it pulled up alongside them, then dropped back, then sped up again. Felt deliberate, like a game. Narrator tense. Now think about that. Miles from the nearest town, no cell signal, your family asleep in the car, and someone is toying with you on the highway. What do you even do? And before I go on, if you're the kind of person who loves stories that make you double-check your mirrors at night, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because what happens next? It only gets worse. The climax. The night it all came to a head. They were driving through a storm. The road was slick, rain hammering the windshield, wipers working overtime. The truck was back, its headlights huge and blinding in the rearview mirror. Then, it rammed them. Just a nudge at first. Enough to make the SUV skid slightly. The father gripped the wheel, heart pounding, while the kids screamed. Then it rammed again. Harder. Up ahead, through sheets of rain, they saw a faint glow. A gas station sign, flickering weakly. The father swerved toward it, hoping for safety. But as they pulled off the road, tires splashing through mud, the truck followed, pushing, forcing them off the main road. They skidded to a stop in front of the station. The building was dark, abandoned, windows boarded. The father jumped out, soaked in seconds, and turned to confront the driver. But when he reached the truck, there was no one inside. The headlights burned bright, the engine idling low, rain dripping off the hood. But the cab was empty, doors locked, windows rolled up. No driver. The mother screamed from the doorway of the gas station. She'd gone inside looking for help, but what she found instead made her blood run cold. Inside were piles of junk. But not just junk. Wallets, old maps, faded Polaroid photos of families. Dozens of them, some dating back decades. It was as if the gas station had been a graveyard for travelers. People who had passed through and never made it out. Sound. Thunder cracks. Headlights flare. And then the truck's engine roared. The headlights swung toward the gas station, cutting through the dark. The father ran back to his family, yelling for them to get in the car. They piled in, the SUV fishtailing as it shot back down the muddy road. Behind them, the pickup followed. No driver. No explanation. Just headlights in the storm. For miles, it tailed them. Sometimes close enough that the bumper nearly touched. Sometimes vanishing into the rain, only to appear again moments later. It didn't stop until they reached the outskirts of the next town. And when they finally pulled into a motel parking lot, shaking and soaked, the truck was gone. Like it had never been there at all. The aftermath. The next morning, the father went to the local authorities. Told them everything. They listened, sent a couple rangers back to check the abandoned gas station. But when they got there, they found nothing. No wallets, no maps, no photos. Not even tire tracks from the night before. The place was just empty. The father insisted he wasn't lying. The kids backed him up, still crying as they described the headlights. But in the end, there was no evidence. Nothing to prove what had happened. The family finished their trip, but it wasn't the same. Every set of headlights behind them made the kids tense. Every small-town motel felt like a trap. And when they finally returned home, they swore they'd never do another road trip again. Reflection. Years later, the kids, now adults, still talk about it. They say sometimes when they dream, it starts the same way. The hum of tires on an empty road, the glow of headlights growing brighter and brighter behind them. No matter where you're going, no matter how safe it feels, the road has its own rules. And once you're out there, miles from anyone, you're never truly alone. So next time you see headlights in your rearview mirror on a dark stretch of highway, ask yourself, is it just another driver? Or is it something else, following you home? Narrator, calm, reflective, unsettling. 3 stories. 3 vacations meant for escape, for rest, for joy. But instead, they became something else entirely. Nightmares written into the quiet corners of summer. The first was supposed to be paradise. Sunlight, sand, and laughter. A girl who thought the beach was a sanctuary quickly learned otherwise. What was meant to be carefree became claustrophobic. Every shadow on the boardwalk hiding a threat. Every set of footsteps behind her echoing too close. The ocean that should have been freedom turned into a barrier. And in the end, her paradise was shattered by something far more dangerous than crashing waves. Another human being. Sound. Ocean waves fade, replaced by the low hum of wind in the trees. Then there was the cabin in the woods. A romantic getaway in the arms of nature, where silence was supposed to be soothing. But silence is never empty. The woods have their own language. Snapping branches, rustling leaves, faint whispers that don't belong to the wind. A place that should have been a refuge revealed itself as something older, something claimed. The couple who went looking for peace found something watching, waiting, circling. And when the storm came, the darkness pressed close, and they saw the truth. Some doors in the wilderness should never be opened. Sound. Wind intensifies briefly, then fades into the distant rumble of a car engine on asphalt. And then the road. A family vacation, meant to be nothing more than long highways, fast food, and laughter echoing in the car. But the open road is a strange place. It belongs to no one and to everyone. You think you're free, but freedom is just another word for isolation. Mile after mile, they realized they weren't alone. That rusty truck wasn't just coincidence. It was something older, stranger. Something that didn't need a driver to haunt them. On a forgotten stretch of road, they glimpsed what was left of travelers before them. Maps that led nowhere. Polaroids of strangers who never made it home. And when the headlights returned, burning white in the dark, they understood. The road doesn't forget. Sound. Car engine hum lingers, then slowly fades into silence. Narrator lower, slower. 3 summer trips. A beach, a cabin, a family road. All with the same lesson whispered through them. Summer promises freedom. Freedom from school, from work, from routine. But freedom is another kind of trap. Because when you're far from home, the things that protect you, neighbors, police, cell service, crowds are gone. Out there, you are small, alone, vulnerable. And that's when the world shows you what it really hides. The stalker in the crowd, the rituals in the trees, the headlights in the rearview mirror. Sound. A faint, rhythmic knocking, like someone tapping lightly on glass. Echoes once, then fades. Narrator uneasy, final reflection. Safety isn't a place you can travel to. It's an illusion we carry, one that can disappear in an instant. Because danger doesn't need a reason. It just needs opportunity. So the next time you pack a bag for the beach, or head into the woods, or start the engine for a long drive, just remember, you might not be traveling alone.